For those of you new to my channel, I'm Julie Mason. Back in 2016, I was given a terminal cancer prognosis, and within 9 months, I managed to get clear scans, and I've been clear for over 4 years now. And Cancer Soothe is to share my story as to how I did it, how I got here. So today, I want to share with you my journey with Dr. Joe Dispenza. Well, not actually with, that would be very nice, but how I took to heart all of his learnings. And going back to early 2017, I was listening to the Hay House radio app that you can have on your telephone. It's still there now. Unfortunately, you have to pay for it now. It's just a little bit, but well worth money, I think, especially if you're at that early stage looking for inspiration. Anyway, Dr. Joe Dispenza was on that, and from that I bought his book at the time, which is Becoming Supernatural. Don't know whether you can see that, Dr. Joe Dispenza, which is quite thick and it is quite heavy, but it's full of the most amazing stuff all about the man, which we're going to be talking about today. So let's talk about quantum physics. I mean, it's an amazing field of science, isn't it? Now, especially if you're the young one going into science, I think that's definitely the area that I'd gravitate to if I was 18 all over again. But anyway, so quantum physics is starting to prove that where you place your attention, your energy flows to whatever you're thinking about. So let's stop and think about that a minute. Could it really be as simple that if I take a moment to think and imagine a life, a future free of cancer, and I imagine what it's like, I feel what that's like, is it really possible that if I did that regularly, I could change my future? Well, that's what his work is all about. But obviously it's not the same as positive thinking. I mean, so many people in the cancer world say, oh, you've got to think positively. And I would say, oh dear, it certainly is not about thinking positively. It is about thinking, but it's also about feeling. I've touched upon this in my videos before, but let's stay with the subject of Joe Dispenza for a minute. Let's take a typical day early on with cancer, where you'd wake up first thing in the morning and think, I've got cancer. When you actually think I've got cancer, what you'll actually be doing is you'll be going back to the past, a memory of maybe the moment when you're told, and you'll be placing your emotion with that past. And you're going back to quantum physics a minute. If we're thinking about the past, our energy is going back into that past. In this case, it was a negative emotion, negative energy. So our energy is going in the past. Now, lying there in bed, the next thought you might have is, oh, I've got my scan results next week. Oh, what on earth are they going to be like? Again, maybe a bit doomy gloomy. That negative emotion is now being usurped into the future. So quantum physics is telling us that we're giving our energy away to the past, or we're giving it away to the future. So okay, you might think, I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to sit in the moment and be present. As you're sitting there in bed, in my case, I'll be thinking, my daughter's about to wake up in a minute. I have to pack the lunchbox, get her off to school. So, and there's a deadline in which to do that. There I am in the moment, giving my energy away to my daughter. Now, this is what we do. An average typical day will be something like this. Energy is usually going to the future and the past, or they're in the moment, in which case they're often being given to somebody else, or worse still, a mobile phone or a screen. I shouldn't say that, you're watching me here now, aren't you? But anyway, so here we are, giving our energy out to everything that's going on in our life. So if you think of a typical day living like that, what's actually happening is your energy is going all over the place. Our mind is actually being bamboozled and chaotic, it's going everywhere. And one thing it's not doing is connecting with your heart. I mean, let's face it, we're busy in life. We're not really heart-centered. We're not still, are we? And so Joe Dispenza's work is all about connecting the thoughts, the head and the heart. And he helps us to understand that when we do that, we're more connected to what scientists are calling the quantum field. Now, when we manage to connect the two, and we manage to connect to this field of energy that's larger than ourselves, it's the place that potentially where we come from and where we're even going to. And on that note, one book that did also change my life was that of Anita Moorjani, who died and came back. And when she did, all of her body, the cancer, which had literally started to destroy her organs, had dissolved. And she's still with us today, alive and well. And this place, wherever she went, let's call it heaven for now, she had the choice to come back again, and she knew in making that choice that she would come back and she would be healed. So she connected to this higher intelligence, this field of information, whatever you want to call it. And this is the thing that science is now being made of. This mass energy, let's call it, this field of electricity, this thing that makes us walk, talk, that makes us alive here today. Life, let's call it life, because that's really is what it is, isn't it? Let's talk about how we can keep looking at our own energy, how we use our energy day by day, and how that can be maximized to actually heal us. So what Joe Dispenza teaches us is that when we live the same continuous repetitive pattern, we're actually quite comfortable. We're living in the known. Our body is in the known. And to change that, to change our ideas of where we want to go, in our case, to be recovered from cancer, we have to break a lot of habits. And so let's look at my situation a minute. I was in a marriage that I know wasn't good for me. It was draining my energy. And I was in a business that was still very, very new, and it was very demanding. That also was taking a lot of my energy. So I knew quite early on, instinctively actually, before I met Joe Dispenza's work, that I had to release all of those things if I was to focus on getting better. We're looking at creating a new you. And in the words of Joe Dispenza, you have to change your whole personality even to create a new you, to think of that you moving into the future as a new identity. But it's not always easy to break patterns, are they? Let's have a think about it. What's going on in your life right now? Is it your marriage? Is it your job? Is it your boss? When we're in these situations, we're living in survival, aren't we? We're living day by day, fueled by stress hormones. And medicine's actually proven that stress hormones are quite addictive. I know that sounds mad. How can you be living an awful life fueled by stress and it's addictive? Well, the reason why it's addictive is because nature designs us to actually manage to escape what's causing the stress. So it's not as easy as you might think to change those things, but well, I'm putting to you that you're going to have to. You have to change a lot. I made it easy for myself. I got out early. I cut the strings on everything that tied me to things that I knew would cause stress. I was lucky. I knew at the beginning of my journey that stress was the most important thing to cut really quickly. Because life's not always that simple, is it? I mean, yes, I could leave my marriage, I could wind down my business, but the one thing I couldn't walk away from was my daughter. And at the time, she was really struggling at school. Well, I know now it's because she had autism, but at the time, the school, when she didn't want to go anymore, would say that it's because she was manipulating me because I had cancer. As a mother, I knew that wasn't true. And I would sit there in front of the headmaster and I would say, she's got special educational needs, what are you doing about it? And I made a blank face. And I knew right then that I could either fight this situation or I could turn down the volume and walk away and treat it differently. So as time went on, Esme simply refused to go to school anymore, and we started to be threatened with fines. So I knew that I had no option. I knew it was more important for me to be alive for her than it was for her to be going to school, and we decided to homeschool her. I'll come back to that later, because I know that in all of your lives you'll be saying, I can't just walk away from the boss, I can't just do this, but I'm going to put to you that with cancer, sometimes it's not a matter of can't, it's a matter of finding another way. I found another way for my daughter, but in that precise moment, I was aware of my energy potentially being pulled in one really hungry situation. I wasn't going to let that happen. And so day by day, I started to watch where my energy was flowing in my life. And from the moment I got up, to that initial thought of cancer, yes, I'd start to turn it around. I'd start to feel the gratitude in my life. I would start to raise that negative thought to a more positive one, but I would combine it with an emotion of a thought of something that was going to be something that I wanted to happen, whether it be that day or in the near future. And so when the negative things did start to happen, you'd become more sensitive as to when it was happening, and you'd manage to pull back. And this is because it takes practice. I would practice every day with watching where my energy was flowing. And of course, I'd been through a little bit of chemo, which had completely zapped me of the energy. Energy was really, really priceless. And I became really, really sensitive as to what I was doing with it, where it was going. And so to do that, I had to put all the memories of the past behind me, and I had to watch my emotions. I had to choose to focus more inwardly on a new future, not a predicted future, not one that I could control and make happen, but one that in my heart I knew I could feel how amazing it was, that that was what I wanted my future to look like. So in other words, I started to marry my emotions with the future, not the past, and not a predicted future. I was creating effectively a new destiny in feeling my way in the moment towards a future that could be even better than anything I could possibly think of. And some days it wasn't always easy. I mean, the diet that we've talked about here takes time and energy and focus and dedication, and some days it's easier than others. So using this mindset, I would turn cooking into more of a meditation, more of a creative exercise. If it became something that was stressful, I would step back, stop, and re-engage. And that was true in all areas. How I chose to look at the situation, instead of seeing it as one, oh, well, I have to do this, I had to have all the nutrition that's going to keep me alive. That was not the right headset, because yes, whilst eating lots of good nutrition can actually help us to obviously be bigger, better, stronger, it's going to take an awful long time if we just, what Joe Dispenza would say, treat matter with matter. In other words, that it was a good reason to keep doing the diet, but if I combined it with the right headset that's connected to something bigger than myself, I effectively super fueled it. So by connecting regularly with what Joe Dispenza calls the unified field, by doing his meditations regularly, you feel whole. And this is where I share with you about this whole feeling and belief system of being healthy, whole and healed. When you start to do this work, that literally is the place that you start to operate from. And it's amazing because Joe Dispenza does whole week workshops where you meet in person at some fancy hotel, and amazing things happen. They have scientists that put these skull caps on your head, and they're able to determine what's happening to somebody when they're in these most amazing states of alignment, which I haven't quite managed to achieve actually, but I do wonder whether frequent practice every day has been good enough for me. But anyway, these skull caps are able to prove that when people are truly connected to this massive field of energy, they actually have what the medics would expect to be having seizures. But in actual fact, people themselves go on to explain that they're in the most amazing, blissful states of love that they've never ever felt anywhere before in their lives. And the most amazing thing, after these experiences, they actually come back with a biological upgrade. And there are all sorts of testimonials out there on YouTube in particular, even of people with cancer, where after having been at one of these events, their tumours have literally started to disappear as they then went on to practice his work. So for me, the most important part of this practice is that I mean, yes, you can meditate, but the thing that Joe Dispenza really encourages you to see yourself as is a nobody. You have no ego, you have no identity, you literally just am, I am. You're a nobody. And when you submit yourself to this field of all-knowing where you are basically nothing but everything, that's where, if you can submit totally like that, in the same way that my integrative doctor, Dr. Rosie Daniel, encouraged me to just believe. It's very similar. You're just totally letting go to this thing far bigger than you are, in the belief that you can be healed. And so the other thing about this work is that it enables you to see every day, not a day of living in lack because it hasn't happened yet, but to understand that you have created it. You've put the work in the belief. It's there, it's in the future. You're just moving this object, this body, into that future that you created with your thoughts and your feelings, and that it's there waiting for you. Now, the thing about this work is that when you do it and you feel how you are connected to something bigger than yourself, the magic does start to happen. Now, we can call them coincidences, we can call them intuition, synchronicities. When you're moving in this world, you actually start to notice them. And one particular one that springs to mind is when I would go for hyperbaric oxygen early on as part of my treatment. And one day I met a woman there who, as it happened, grew up being homeschooled, and I shared my experience that was happening with my daughter. And she happened to mention that she had a friend who had set up a Steiner school not far from me in a neighbouring town. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. Thought nothing more of it. And then the next day I bumped into somebody else who I hadn't seen for a year or two, who happened to mention, when I told her what was happening, had I thought about the Steiner school and how it was a state school. I didn't even have to pay for it. And so I thought, yeah, this is a coincidence, isn't it? 2 days in a row. And I went and I looked about it. And there's a really long waiting list. But I knew that there was something that was meant to happen here. And I applied, and against all the odds, I managed to get my daughter into that school. So the point I'm making to you is that what started at this beginning of this video could have been a big problem for me, taking my child out of school. I listened to my heart. I trusted. I knew everything would be right, and that really is what it's all about: trust, belief, creation, and the fact that we're connected to something that's invisible and more powerful than we can possibly ever realize. So here I am. I've created my dream life, everything that I wanted, and yes, I still have dreams, and I have belief that it's there, and I'm heading towards it, and I'd like the same for you. So I've put in the description box below all the things that I think you'll find useful, from Hay House to Joe Dispenza is actually doing a course at the moment with Hay House that I'll also put links to. Oh, of course, you can go online and do his progressive course like I did. Either way, go out, enjoy, discover. If you've been left feeling curious about it, do follow it up. And yeah, please don't forget, if you like my video, give me a thumbs up, and please do subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I look forward to seeing you next time.